May 18th, 2017 has now been called to order. We will have the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance by my Vice President, Mr. Brain. Please stand.
Father God, we just love you. We thank you for this day. We just thank you for all the many blessings that you lay upon each one of our lives, Father. And we just thank you for just all that you do. And God, we just pray that you give us wisdom and discernment tonight as we make the decisions that please you, Father. We ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Madam Secretary. Here.
Vice President Moran.
Here.
Here.
Mr. Farmer.
Here.
Mr. Guillory is also attending a graduation. Mr. Landry.
Here.
Oh, good.
I know it's unusual these days. What am I?
What about us? You thought I was with Mr. Guillory along with Mr. Andrew
We
for
did. We're
his
so glad to have
granddaughter's
you, Mr.
graduation, but no, I went ahead and made it.
With us tonight.
Mr. Latour.
Here.
Ms. Mayo.
Here.
Mr. McMillan.
Here.
Mr. Scott.
Here.
Mrs. Tremmy is attending her niece's graduation this evening, and Mr. White is also attending his daughter's graduation at Sam Houston High School in Pleasant Petrie.
Thank you, Madam Secretary.
You're welcome.
Few housekeeping notes. If there's anyone that has a cell phone or a page, we would ask that you would put those devices to silent. And if there's anyone that wishes to speak on any of the items on tonight's agenda, please pick up one of the blue slips in the rear of you and please bring that to Miss Jessica or Miss Kathy, and we'll be more than happy to put you on the agenda. At this time, we'll move on to item number 4. Receive report from the National Weather Service regarding the Storm Ready certification renewal for Calcasieu Parish. Mr. Dick Grimion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dick Grimion, 1015 Peton, Lake Charles. Tonight we have Andy Patrick here with us. He's the meteorologist in charge with the National Weather Service, and he's got a couple of things he's going to talk to us about. But I just wanted to say we have a great relationship with the National Weather Service, and we're very lucky to have them here in our backyard. These guys, we talk to them virtually on a daily basis, particularly when we have events like the floods last month, and of course we got hurricane season coming up. So with that, I'd like to introduce Andy Patrick.
Mr. Andy, please state your name and address for the record, please. Thank you, sir.
My name is Andy Patrick, meteorologist charged with the National Weather Service. We're located at 500 Airport Boulevard, Suite 115 in Lake Charles. We're near the, we're just down the street from Christ the King Catholic Church. Thank you, Dick, for the greeting. And I wanted to talk really about 3 things, if I could. And again, thank you for allowing me to take a few minutes of your time to discuss some changes with the 2017 hurricane season. It's coming up on June 1st, and the first slide is actually going to be one of the biggest changes we've probably had in quite a few years, actually. It's the prototype storm surge watch and warning. It's going to be introduced. It was introduced on an experimental basis in 2015, but we really haven't any tropical systems to deal with over the last couple of years. So now it's actually going to be operational. What is the Storm Surge Watch and Warning is actually going to be produced in collaboration with storm surge specialists and National Weather Service meteorologists here. And our goal is actually going to be to convey the most accurate storm surge watch and warning area that we can for the parish. It is also going to be, it's intended for to enhance the public response to local officials. And we're going to be talking a little bit more. I know that in-depth, Dane's going to be attending a meeting as well next week with the parish officials. We're going to talk a little more in-depth about that and some other changes as well. Now, the reason for this new change is pretty simple. Everyone remembers Hurricane Ike, 2008. What people don't remember is the fact that, let's say, in southwest Louisiana and points further east, the the impacts from the hurricane were very minimal from Hurricane Ike, except for the storm surge. We had an abundant of storm surge across south central Louisiana, southeast Louisiana. I understand, in talking with Dick, there was up to 8 feet of storm surge all the way over to Bay St. Louis, and they really did not have any other hurricane impacts other than the storm surge. So, consequently, it was decided about 3 or 4 years ago that we would start a storm surge product, storm surge watch and warning product, to convey this type of information. So, in other words, we're basically going to be having this type of warning. It could occur in conjunction with a hurricane warning or not. A lot will depend on what we think the water levels are going to be with a tropical system. So, again, Roger Erickson will be briefing the parish officials next week on this. So, and a little more in depth. And the NOAA, just a side note, NOAA will be issuing their hurricane outlook on Thursday of next week as well. And all indications are that it's going to be a near or below normal type of season. So, so hopefully we can dodge another tropical system. Next item I want to talk real briefly about is the Weather Ready Nation Ambassador Program. All of us in this room obviously have experienced significant weather. Now, the National Weather Service actually would like to recognize both private and public entities who promote weather safety in their agency or business. Locally, we have obviously an array of agencies ranging from industries, obviously, to even the smallest business, and I'll give you some examples here on who are currently weather-ready ambassadors here locally. Obviously, the OEP office, Sasol, as large an industry that is, and we actually have Talbert's Medical Billing. That's just a random small business that just became a weather-ready ambassador. So, if you are interested, I'm going to just pull up this slide here. The website's right there, and obviously Roger Erickson or myself can help you as far as if you have any questions regarding this. Otherwise, it's a rather easy enrollment procedure. It's free, and the only thing normally that will happen with this is basically you will get maybe an occasional survey, optional survey to complete, and you also get some weather safety tips as well. So really, it will not be a means for inboxes to be inundated with emails, and this will only happen occasionally. And one of the things too about the Weather Ready Nation concept, it all starts locally. It starts with a local business, a grassroots type of effort to convey weather safety information in your business and be able to address a lot of, help mitigate, like we have here during major flooding and hurricane events. And if we all come together in that, we can actually build a weather-ready community and a weather-ready nation. So if you are interested again in that, I ask that you please talk about it with your constituents as well. It's really a great way to have your community recognized as far as your ability to provide weather safety and mitigation. Last thing I want to talk about is I want to congratulate Calcasieu Parish on maintaining storm-ready status, okay? They've been storm-ready for actually 12 years. We actually had our second renewal during the winter. We actually made our inspections in January. And the way it works, the inspections work are pretty simple. We go to the OEP office, make sure that they have a means to disseminate weather information to the public. And we also visited the 911 center. That's the key as far as getting weather information out, mainly tornado warnings, help to activate the sirens and so forth if need be. So, right now, locally, we have the City of Lake Charles, McNeese State University, and Fort Polk are storm ready. Storm ready communities can be large venues, kind of like what we were talking about with the Weather Ready Nation, or they can actually be very small entities, such as, let's say Talladega Speedway. So we appreciate, again, storm ready. Again, we appreciate Calcasieu Parish and all their work to become storm ready. And just to close, I'd like to recognize the following individuals: Kate McLemore and Dick Remion with the OEP office, 911 Director Richard McGuire. He showed us all the means in which weather dissemination goes out to the citizens and first responders. And finally, of course, Roger Erickson, our own morning coordination meteorologist of the National Weather Service in Lake Charles. And that's all I have. Any questions about the hurricane season, I'll be happy to take up. Otherwise, thank you for your time.
Any questions by the jury? Mr. Landry?
Have they predicted the number of storms this year, named storms? Have they done that yet?
Not the official number. I think the main thing we're going to take away is we believe it's actually going to be a near normal season, and near normal is anywhere around 10 or so named systems. So what we're anticipating is a climate pattern known as El Nino to potentially kick in late in the year, and that normally helps to limit the amount of tropical storm hurricane activity. So the timing of when that comes in, it could come in the middle part of summer. It could actually delay well into the fall, which really to us kind of is well past the end of our hurricane season. So, but right now we don't really see a signal of a very active season. So that's sort of good news there.
Thank you.
Mr. Barris?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for your report and your information. We haven't had, people kind of ask, well, we haven't had a crazy cold winter. So everybody say, well, that Gulf, has the Gulf had a chance to cool off? Is that just a misnomer? I mean,
I think when people discuss those, I think we look more towards the Atlantic as opposed to the Gulf, and I'll tell you why. It's basically the Atlantic's a larger volume of water, and if there's any good news to be had with this, and I don't have the graphics to show this, but it looks like there's much cooler than normal water conditions, especially north of the Bahamas area. Around the Gulf of Mexico itself, it's a little bit near normal. We don't really see anything abnormally warm to really hint at some sort of large-scale early tropical cyclone development. But the point is, though, and this is something I tell everybody, it's kind of the terminology I use, even if we're predicting a low hurricane type of season, it only takes one. And El Nino, I've always said, is kind of like a baseball pitcher. It's really good at limiting stuff, but it rarely throws a shutout. So one person can actually get one community can be a very bad year, but the rest of it's kind of like 1992 with Hurricane Andrew.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Scott?
Yeah, thank you for coming. I was honored to be able to just a couple months ago sit in the National Weather Service with Mr. Louie. And actually, we spoke a lot about the needs here in Southwest Louisiana. And now, as we sit throughout the nation and we listen to the different needs, most of the nation has specific needs. And when I had a chance to talk, I made sure that he knew that not only were y'all an important part of this team, but you were more like family. Because every day we count on the National Weather Service here because of our petroleum industry, railroads, you name it, we have every situation. So, I voiced our concerns, making sure that if anything, we get more help here and not less help. So thank you for your time, and if we can ever do anything for you, and one day maybe we could even get you in the same house. That was a big discussion in itself, so thank you for what you do.
Well, thank you, Mr. Scott. And I just want to add real quickly, you may be hearing about how the National Weather Service is starting to reorganize, but I've told Dick this and everything else. We've already been doing the type of stuff that they're starting to promote, the decision support aspect of it, where we're talking with parish officials, engaging with industry on key decisions as far as any sort of weather impact, severe weather, flooding, tropical cyclones. So we're happy to do this. We made a lot of friends in this manner as well, and we're very happy to be serving the community this way. We serve Southeast Texas and Southwest Louisiana. We go pretty much from Beaumont, Texas, Jasper, Texas, all the way to the Atchafalaya rivers. But I can tell you this, we really, just talking with all of you here in the parish, it seems that this is probably one of the best areas that I've known. I've worked in the Weather Service for 30 years that really know how to respond to events, really know how to take our weather information and use it in a very effective manner for its citizens. So I thank you again for the comments.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any other questions by the jury? Mr. Andy, we thank you so much for coming out this evening and sharing that with us, and very detailed report.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Grimion, would you want to add anything to what was said tonight?
I just wanted to thank Andy for finding that picture of me. Mr. McMillan will appreciate this, when me and Roger had more hair.
Thank you, Mr. Grimion. Any other discussion? Any objection? Motion carried. Moving on to item number 5, take appropriate actions on applications for liquor and beer permits. Mr. Crane.
Mr. President, we don't have any applications before you tonight. No action necessary.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 6, consideration approving payments of all.
Move on item 6.
I have a motion by Mr. McMillan and a second by Mr. Scott. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carried. Item number 7, consideration approving the minutes of the regular meeting of the police
Move on,
jury
7.
dated April 20th, 2017. I have a motion by Mr. Barrett and a second by Mr. Collins. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carried. Item number 8, take appropriate actions on a request
to
by
approve
Brandon
plan and zone and
Terrell
recreation.
to abandon and revoke the original dedication of Bonnie Lane. The Planning and Zoning Board met on Tuesday, May 16, 2017, and voted unanimously to recommend that the request be granted. I have a motion by Mr. Collins to uphold planning and zoning, and a second by Mr. Barris. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carried. Item number 9, take appropriate action on
Move on
request by
9 to
Donna
uphold
Murray
planning and
to
zoning.
rezone from single-family residential to central business commercial. The Planning and Zoning Board met and recommended that the request be deferred for 30 days.
That's what I meant to defer, I'm sorry. That's off.
I had a motion by Mr. Latour to defer for 30 days, and a second by Ms. Mayo. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carried. Item number 10, take appropriate actions on a request by LOC Bulk Plant Properties LLC to rezone from light industrial to heavy industrial to allow heavy industrial development petroleum storage at 564 Dennis Road in Ward 4. The Planning and Zoning Board met on Tuesday, May 16, 2017, and voted unanimously to recommend that the request be granted with stipulations.
Move on,
Second. I think.
10,
I have a motion by Mr. Barris to uphold planning and zoning.
Uphold.
to uphold, excuse me.
You're quite welcome, sir. And a second by Mr. Landry, who always comes through for me. Any discussion? Any objection?
That's why I'm sitting here.
Motion carried. Item number 11, consideration of adopting a resolution
Second.
accepting Calcasieu Industrial Park Unit 1, Phase 2. I have a motion by Mr. Fornum and a second by Mr. Barris. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carried. Item number 12, consideration of ratifying the following actions taken
Move on 12
by
on
Vice
board.
President
Second.
Brame as a result of flooding on roadways and waterways in the parish of Calcasieu. Let me read those items into the record, starting with item A. Executive Order 2017-02, which revoked Executive Order 2017-01. Item B, Executive Order 2017-03, which ordered and restricted traffic on the east fork of the Calcasieu River. Item C, Executive Order 2017-04, which revoked Executive Order 2703. I had a motion by Mr. Frame on all items and a second by Mr. Latour. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carried. Item number 13.
Move on 13.
Second. Consideration of adopting a resolution in support of the levy reform bill, Louisiana House Bill 259, which proposes to authorize any levy district created after January 1st, 2006, to levy a property tax up to 5 mills. I have a motion by Mr. Scott and a second by Mr. McMillan. Any discussion? Any objection? Item number 14. Consideration of adopting a process verbal and resulting promulgating the results of the election held on April 29, 2017 of Sewage District Number 11 of Ward 3
Move on 14.
and
Second.
8
Second.
of Calcasieu Parish, Louisiana. I have a motion by Mr. Landry and a second by Mr. Fornum. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carried.
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. McMillan?
last item, You asked for discussion, but
Yeah.
you never said motion carried. Would you,
Which item was that, Mr. McMillan?
Item 13.
Item 13.
I heard him. I think he said it.
Yeah,
No, you didn't say
I
motion
didn't see
carried.
it. Okay.
Maybe it
Can we
won't.
vote on
I
it?
don't know.
See if
I
he
heard
said-
I know you heard me,
I
Chris.
saw our
I know
attorney's
you heard
face.
Chris.
We got it over here.
I'm going to go back to item number 13 for Mr. McMillan. Consideration of adopting a resolution in support of the levy reform bill, Louisiana House Bill 259, which proposes to authorize any levy district created after January 1st, 2006, to levy property tax up to 5 mills. I had a motion by
Mr. Scott?
Mr. Scott and a
Second.
second by Mr. McMillan. Any discussion? Any discussion on that item? Any objection? Motion carried. Mr. McMillan on number 13.
Thank you, sir.
I'll
Thank you,
never
Mr.
get that time back. It's gone.
Chris, I know, Chris,
Another minute wasted to Hal
Chris.
McMillan.
Chris,
Done right.
sometimes we have
Oh, you
to.
did it right the first time. I heard it.
It's not counting the time. either.
Item,
And I'll bet
item
you
number
$100.
15, consideration of adopting a resolution ratifying the submittal of a proposal to the Louisiana High School Athletic Association to host the state girls and boys
Motion by Ms. Mayo.
basketball tournament at Burton Coliseum. I had a motion by Ms. Mayo and a second by Mr. Collins. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carried. Item number 16, consideration of adopting a resolution approving the Louisiana compliance questionnaire requested in connection with the police jury 2016
On
audit.
16.
Second?
I have a motion by Mr. McMillan and a second by Mr. Barris. Any discussion? We do have discussion. Mr. Landry.
Go ahead, Brian. Can you explain that to us?
I would like Tammy, if you don't mind.
Would you please come forth, Miss? Oh, I'm sorry.
You can do it from right
Tammy, you're fine where you at. I'm so sorry.
We're a fit parish, though.
I'm
We
so
need to-
sorry.
Yeah.
Please, Miss Tammy, you may proceed.
This is something that's required by our annual audit. Basically, it's a questionnaire that asks, do we know of any fraud? Are we in compliance with all laws and procurement laws and all the various laws that we're required to comply with?
I thought that might be what that is. You know, I got that in the mail the other day. I just hate filling that out. I mean, really. If you read it, and if somebody is doing things that they aren't supposed to do you really think they're going to tell you the truth? Of course they're going to tell you that they're not doing anything wrong. That's part of being a crook. I mean, you know, I read that, I'm thinking, really?
They caught me. They sent me the letter.
They let her,
Now I have
I mean,
to
it
tell them
just,
the truth.
I don't know, but I guess I'm just gonna fill it out like I've been doing and just not complain about it.
That's a minute of my life I won't get.
Thank you.
Have you read the questionnaire? Am I correct? Do you disagree with me?
Get that minute back.
There you go.
Thank you, Miss Tammy. We had a motion and a second. Any discussion, any objection? Motion carried. Item number 17, consideration of authorizing
Move on
the
17.
parish purchasing agent
Second.
to advertise for bids for the Calcasieu Parish Public Works East and West Solid Waste Convenience Center Repairs and Improvement Project. I have a motion by Mr. Barris and a second by Mr. Latour. Any discussion?
Yep.
We have discussion. Mr. Scott?
Mr. Wainwright, if you can just kind of, I know people really love those, so maybe we can tell them what we're doing.
Oh, I'd be glad to. What we're doing is really some upgrades. First, and probably the most obvious thing, we're putting a lot of concrete down. The pad where you pull up on will be concrete now. The pad below where the containers are moved will be concrete, and all those things on the above deck, that's so we can keep it cleaner, a little neater. On the below deck, that's so the containers can be moved around and serviced easier. We're adding improved battery container facilities where we receive batteries so we can keep them dry, things like that. On the east side, we're actually able to add some capacity. We'll have 3 to 4 additional containers on the south side of that facility, which will, the way they'll be positioned, should allow us to have 5 to 6 more vehicles on the deck at one time. So we're adding a little capacity and, you know, just hopefully a little bit better ability to keep them clean and neat, keep nails picked up, things that come along with that kind of service. So We look forward to doing that this winter. In our lowest time, those centers are never underused, but this winter we'll try and do that and try not to disrupt service, least we possibly can.
Is the volume continuing to go up as far as what we're collecting?
Yes, sir, our volume is tremendous. It seems to be a success. I agree with,
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Mr. Forner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I got to use the West facility this past weekend. One thing that kind of struck me a little strange, one of the attendants said that actually people are required to bag their loose stuff that they may bring there that's maybe not limbs or something, but she was telling us that, and it's like, I hope we don't get to the point to where we make this so complex that people stop going. And they say, I'm just going to dump this in the ditch. It's a whole lot easier to dump it in the ditch than to bag it to go to these places. So I hope we continue with a very flexible policy of how these folks bring their trash to our dump. So, and also if you guys could maybe on the days that they're closed, maybe have the Public Works folks send a little patrol out, because we have a little bit of a rash of dumping when a lot of people don't know they're there. They don't know when they're open. They don't know when they're closed. So the days that they show up when they're closed, it ends up in a ditch somewhere close, because they're not hauling it back to their house. So if we could maybe make a little pass in at least the near vicinity, because over at the West facility, the dump site seems to be just around the corner. And it ends up in that ditch on the back end of that subdivision over there. So if y'all could do that for us, we'd appreciate it.
yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. Mr. Landry.
They may not know that it's there, but I surely hope that they know that it's not supposed to be thrown in the ditch. Call the officer and have him investigate it. He usually catches it.
That's all, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Landry. Mr. Barris.
Thank you. Is there a way to kind of quantify where, I know they check the IDs, I mean, are we seeing, what type of reach are we seeing on each of these, as far as how far people are actually coming to use those facilities?
We can actually provide you a map. I don't have it here with me tonight. I'd be glad to provide you a map. We convert those to basically a dot map and show you exactly. They come all from across the parish. Very few of the addresses we're get outside of the parish every now and then. There's one or two. In a service like that, you're always trying to. It's intended for the residents of Calcasieu Parish, so we watch that as close as we can. But we can provide you with a map that's really a unique and interesting to look at, but it's where you would expect the highest density. It comes from the highest urbanized areas, but it's throughout the parish.
Okay, and you say that the usage is on the upswing. Would that maybe, would that information maybe tell us we maybe need to put another smaller type, I mean, is there any conversation about something like that?
Well,
satellite, if you will?
Yeah. Well, we're trying to sustain the operations. I mean, at this point, we feel like we have it pretty contained. At this point, it's not that the centers back up so much as it's awful hard. I mean, it's just a challenge to keep the dumpsters empty.
Right.
And Waste Management does a tremendous job. They have the contract right now. They really do, but they nearly have a full-time driver just servicing our sites. It's just so much turnover of solid waste. So, we're always watching for that and looking for that, and that's one of the reasons for this upgrade, especially on the east side. We had a little more space, and we're going to first try and tweak those to just maximize their capacity before we look to, possibly expand to another site, because, it is a significant operational step to try and do that.
Well, I'm just trying to, make sure that we don't have a rash of free couches and refrigerators the further out we go.
Yeah.
I mean, do we know how many times our trucks are having to go out there and you know, a couple, 4 or 5 guys have to go and get couches or you know what I mean? Is there a way to?
We do not track how many times specifically, but I can tell you, having been here at pre-solid waste centers, I used to, and our offices used to get 1 to 2 of those requests a week, and now we get 1 to 2 a month, if that much. So it's some of you that have the known dumping areas in your areas, you know that those areas are a lot less used simply because there's a place for someone to go bring it legally.
Right.
And we still run into the part there where we're closed on some days, but because there's a free available spot, we feel like the large majority of what was illegally dumped is being brought to us.
Good news. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
President.
Mr. Barris. Mr. McMillan.
Thank you. Thank you for what we're doing with those waste centers. They're tremendous, Alan, and I appreciate all the stuff you've done. Looking to the future, and we've had some meetings early on with some of the industries and stuff that do some recycling. Do we have an opportunity for another pad that if the parish wanted to get into some recycling of certain, recyclables, that we could add that to our solid waste centers?
Well, I suppose we always have an opportunity, but we do recycle some things now. Metals recycled there, batteries are recycled there, some of the cardboard, the green containers that you see them all over. The parish waste management has sort of a cardboard and papers recyclable program that we're involved with. So we do those, and maybe some other opportunities. There's always things you're looking at. But those are things that as we grow and progress, I suppose we can continue to look at.
I didn't know as a juror that we were doing that. That's tremendous. I'm excited to hear that we are doing the recycling as much as we can, and hopefully we can build on that. Thank you for doing that. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. Mr. Scott.
To follow up on that, all the vegetation, are we looking at how we're still hauling it off?
Excuse me.
Are we looking at mulching it one day, or maybe the city, since we're taking so much of the city trash, maybe they'll burn it for us if we take it over there?
We do get a lot of limb vegetation that I suppose would have some opportunities with that, but we get a lot of very mixed. What goes into our vegetation is really wood and vegetation, so you get a lot of construction debris and buildings being tore down, things like that basically what we're calling vegetation is really ends up being C and D. And you could sort it and spend a lot of time trying to sort it, but it really gets to be a burden. Trying to keep up on those days, especially when people are out trimming their yards and things. So, if we were ever going to look into some sort of facility like that, it would have to be specialized.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Mr. Wainwright, just a point of clarification. I was listening to Mr. Farnham and Mr. Barris about people taking stuff, if the dump site is not available, to be used at that time and discarding it elsewhere. Didn't at one time we had someone from the sheriff's office that was monitoring this parish, going out, writing tickets, and doing things like that for people discarding stuff such as that?
We do, maybe ask Brian or Dane. Dane probably
just wondering
actually
if that's
got
something
more
that we're still
information
doing
on
for
that
this
part of it, yeah.
You're correct, Mr. Guidry. We do have a litter patrol officer, and if you can give him a call or call us, he's usually out there shortly after the phone call. We take pictures, and if needed, write citations.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you, Mr. Dane. We had a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carried. Item number 18, take appropriate actions on bids received by the parish purchasing agent for the Central and Moss Bluff Library Study Room modifications and Central Library chiller replacement project. We had 7 bids that were submitted, and the agenda note states, the project architect recommended that the low bid in the amount of $875,900 of Shannon Smith Construction LLC be accepted.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Barris and a second by Mr. Collins. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carried. Item number 19, take appropriate action to adopt a resolution making a temporary appointment fill the vacancy for the District 5 seat on the police jury, which resulted from the resignation of Mr. Nicholas E. Hunter after recently being elected to the mayor of the city of Lake Charles.
Move on to item 19.
Nominations,
Move to open nominations.
nominations are now open to fill the vacancy of the District 5 seat. Are there any nominations?
I'd like to nominate Dr. Charles Mackey.
Second.
Mr. Landry nominated Dr. Charles Mackey. Are there any other nominations for this seat?
Move that nominations be closed.
Second.
Hearing none, nominations are now closed. Any opposition to the appointment of Dr. Charles Mackey? Hearing none, Dr. Charles Mackey is now appointed to the District 5 seat of the Calcasieu Parish Police Jury. Moving on to item number 20. Take appropriate actions to issue a proclamation ordering a special election to be held in District 5 of the Parish of Calcasieu on October 14th, 2017. I have a motion by Mr. Fornum and a second by Mr. Landry. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carried.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Item number 21, I have a motion by Mr. Landry to adjourn, and I have a second by Vice President Mr. Brain. We are now adjourned.